I think outwardly, Portland has had the weird brand for too long.
Right now, the trajectory for women's sports is skyrocketing.
This has never been a moment. It has been building for years and years and years.
There's a full-on culture shift, not just with women's sports, but sports in general.
We have to look at it like a business. Because ultimately, for people to continue to invest in it, we have to be building businesses like yours, businesses like ours.
You can have great stats, you can have a great game, you can have winners, champions, all of that stuff, great. But what is it that really makes a loyal fan? It's the authentic connection to the human story. Wait, I'm hosting?
You're hosting today.
Let's do this.
I'm Lauren Duletsky. I'm co-host and co-founder of a new media brand here in Portland called Click Clack, Like a Heel. It's co-founded by myself and my fearless friend, Jackie Jamelis, who couldn't be here today because she is on her honeymoon in Greece.
Second honeymoon,
that's correct. She is a former WNBA player who played in the league and overseas for 10 years and one of the best people I know. But I know you're all not here just to see me today. And so we are honored to have Jenny Nguyen, founder of the Sports Bra, here with me in the guest host seat. We've interviewed you before.
A little bit,
but you've never been a podcast host before.
No,
so
that's true. Wait, I'm hosting?
You're hosting
today.
Okay,
let's do this.
But I'll kick it over to Jenny just to say a little something, introduce herself for anybody that's new, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm Jenny Nguyen. I'm the founder and CEO of the Sports Bra here in Portland, Oregon. We're the world's first sports bar 100% dedicated to women's sports, and we're so grateful to the Portland Classic, the Standard, and the LPGA for having us pop up here right on hole 15 and doing this thing. We're super excited to be here. And thank you guys for being here.
I also have to call out what I think is really significant and interesting is that, you know, Jenny founded the Sports Bra 4 years ago, right, Jenny? 4 years ago, opened three and a half years ago. We're a new women's sports media brand, and we're different, but we're here in Portland. And we talk a lot about Portland being the epicenter of women's sports. And it's just for me personally, it's very significant to sit with you here for our brand and to be with you and all you've done for women's sports to help really project what the future can look like for women in sports, all kinds of women in sports.
Thank you so much. Ditto. And I mean, to sit here with somebody from Portland too and building a business from the ground up, right?
Yep.
Couple of unicorns in front of y'all.
We got a long way to go. It takes a lot of grit to build a company, right? I want to start by saying, I always like to say about myself, I grew up loving sports. I grew up here in Portland. Sport has always been part of my DNA. My dream was to work at Nike. I ended up getting to do that, and I worked in innovation, and it was amazing. I'm a big runner, I'm a marathon runner, but I never really identified with professional sports. I was kind of that girl where I was like, I'm just kind of here for the halftime show, and that's it, and then I'm out. And a big part of that, I think, is because, as we all know, women weren't getting the opportunities in sports from a storytelling, a viewership, an equity perspective. And there has been a big shift. So for me, within the last year, while I was working on women's sports projects at Nike, it was a huge unlock to see what was happening. Women for the first time, multidimensional women, that were showing up and making a huge impact on women like me. And so for the first time, I saw myself in professional sports, and that's why I got into this space. So you have a different experience in sports. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you bet. So born and raised here in Portland, picked up a basketball around the age of 5 and never really put it down. So was deeply in love with playing basketball and watching basketball. Grew up with the Portland Trailblazers. And then from a super young age, I witnessed people showing up for women's sports at the University of Portland soccer games. And then when the ABL came through with the Portland Power, there were thousands of people that came to those games. And then when the Portland Fire came through the first time, again, we had the biggest crowds. And so I felt like Portland was really here for women's sports. And so as I got older, I was just like, I wonder if something like the Sports Bra might work here in this town.
And I think the Sports Bra, for me, is such a significant name. I was not your girl that went into sports bars. That's not something I ever did. I would prefer to go to a cocktail bar. That's where I'd like to hang out. When I went to the Sports Bra for the first time, it felt like it was for someone like me. And it felt like a place where I could ask dumb questions about women's sports, statistics, like what is the basics of a free throw? Just help me understand that, right? And I think for a long time, women have felt like if we're not perfect at understanding the stats of the game, we don't have a seat at the table. And that is all changing because of these multidimensional women in sports. And I think the Sports Bra embodies what that looks like from a destination where you can go and you can meet women from all different sides of sports. So can you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to open a place for people to come and celebrate girls and women playing sports, right? But when we opened the doors, it wasn't just about sports. It wasn't just that. When you open a space that is welcoming and inclusive to other folks, I mean, it creates somewhat of a safe space. So you can come in, you can be a non-fan, you can not know anything about that. You can come in, have a great drink, have great food, great service, catch a little sports, and maybe become a fan. And that's the point. And I think that, you know, traditional sports bars have kind of been missing the mark for as long as they've been around. And so when it came to kind of opening the doors on the sports bra, at first it started out with just changing the channel, you know, and putting women's sports on. But then it became, oh, how else can we be, you know, inclusive? How else can we, you know, our tagline is "We support women," which I thought was hilarious. Support. But then it was just like, okay, how else can we support women? And so just creating those spaces with intentionality.
Absolutely. And I mean, I felt that. And it's made me a fan. This is actually my first LPGA tournament. And so I'm really excited. My husband's been trying to get me into golf. He's obsessed with golf. And seeing these women, I got a chance to talk to Nancy Lopez, absolute legend, and other up-and-comers. I was like, I could see myself getting out on the course.
I mean, I think that my dad would be so thrilled if I got on the course more than once a year.
We might have to go, Jenny. We might have to go.
I mean, I'll putt around. I'll putt around a little bit.
I love it. So let's talk, we're going to zoom out of golf. We're going to go into a bigger, more macro level. We're going to talk about the landscape of women's sports. Jenny and I were talking like ad nauseum about this because it's something we're both really passionate about and from really different perspectives. So Portland, we've talked about it a little bit, right? Jenny shared some experiences growing up here, being around thousands of fans. We also, I want to call out, have the Portland Pilots here, where some of the most legendary NWSL players have come out. Christine Sinclair, Megan Rapinoe, and there are more people coming up that are absolutely incredible. We truly believe that Portland is going to be an epicenter for women's sports.
Yep.
I think outwardly, Portland has had the weird brand for too long because of Portlandia. But the reality is when you come here, it's an incredibly special place, and sport is an underpinning of the culture here. Not to mention that some of the biggest sport companies in the world were founded here, right?
Exactly. And one thing that I sometimes equate it to is that we've had really great restaurants and really great food here, and people who are here and eating it, they know that. But nobody was really talking about Portland as a foodie town until some big magazine came and printed it out. And it's just like the word got out. And like now with, you know, the W coming back to Portland and just an amazing Thorns crowd and history and just champions, right?
They've had the most championships of any NWSL.
It's kind of like blowing the lid off of it.
So we're on the 15th green here, and we can't not talk about the epicenter of sports in Portland without talking about the LPGA and the Portland Classic here. And major shout out to the Standard, who has made this possible to keep this tour here. I don't know how many of you know about the history of this tour, but it's the longest standing tour in the tournament's history. 1972 was when it was founded.
Unreal.
Did you ever come as a kid?
No.
So this is your first time too?
I mean, I came last year.
Oh,
that was my
right. You
first
were
time.
here last year. Yeah. What was the energy like for you last year when you were here?
I think it was pretty awesome because I'd never been. And what's interesting to me is that we had a couple of folks that follow us on Instagram, and they won tickets through our Instagram. And they have never been to a golf tournament before. And I met them yesterday, and they were so stoked. They are huge WNBA fans. They're huge Thorn fans, and they don't really watch golf. And they said that they saw some incredible athletes, and they started following them right away. And they were like very enthusiastic, and they were just like, we're into golf now. I was just like, that's what I'm talking about.
I think, again, that's why it's so important that we have so much opportunity and access for women's sports here in Portland.
Absolutely.
Because if we all know that like the biggest opportunity for scale with women's sports is storytelling and social media.
And seeing it. Right?
Yeah. Like seeing it. That's the biggest opportunity. But going to it is where you really build true fandom.
Totally.
Like me, like Jenny, how we're like, maybe we need to pick up a golf, a club more.
Oh yeah. I mean, I hit a couple in.
I heard you did great yesterday.
I did pretty good, and I got bit by the bug. I was just like, oh, I can do this.
She might be on the LPGA tour someday. You never know.
Low key, I hit one like drive, and it hit a tree, and it broke a branch off. So there's some balance to that.
You know, you don't get it right with every
hot and cold, hot and cold.
You don't get it right with every it, right? Not so much, but
A metaphor for life.
a metaphor for life. That's right. But I think it's really significant that like we're at the tip of the iceberg for opportunity.
For sure.
I mean, what you've done with the sports bra, you've brought a new innovation to experience, to community, to engagement, something that women's sports has needed for so long. What do you feel like for you? Like the sports bra has been, I think it's kind of rebranded Portland in a lot of ways. Like when we talk about rebranding, right? Like the sports bra, people are starting to say, oh, like in Portland? That from a brand perspective is crucial. Like how do you think it's going to continue to evolve here?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so much of it is just like building the plane as you're flying it, right? And just being adaptable and adjusting. You know, when we opened, there were people coming out of the woodworks being like, women's sports, nobody watches that. Or you're going to have to start showing men's sports in order to like make ends meet or like to fill up the bar. And it was just one of those things where it was just like, gosh, I don't know. And then the moment we opened, you know, there's something about visibility on TV screens, but there's also something about visibility for places where women's sports is being celebrated. So when we hear day after day after day, records being broken on attendance, like 80,000 seat stadiums selling out, and then them having to move venues, like that over and over and over on the front page of things, or people driving by the sports bra and a line out the door, those kinds of things are kind of building that hype. You know, you just create the space and people fill it. And so for us, it's really just about listening and learning. I mean, so many people are like, oh, the sports bra, you've done this and this amazing, you did this. And it was just like, it has evolved. You know, just like any business, if you close off and you think you've nailed it, it's gonna start like, you know, you're gonna start losing people. So it's constantly evolving and listening and learning. And what's amazing is right now, the trajectory for women's sports is skyrocketing. And so we're seeing things we've never seen before. And so everyone is adapting. There's a full-on culture shift, not just with women's sports, but sports in general. And we're here for it.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, bringing it back to the growth piece, we hear a lot on the opposite side where people are like, oh, this is just a moment. It's just a moment, right? And my argument is this has never been a moment. No. It's never been a moment. It has been building for years and years and years. Think about decades. And that's why, you know, especially in our brand, and I know your brand too, it's about celebrating the heritage of where we've been. Legends like Nancy Lopez, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Julie Inkster, Diana Taurasi, like who's also getting a statue very soon, the first Seattle Storm statue ever. You know, this is just the beginning. And I think what's super critical that I like to talk about a lot is while we're all excited about like the storytelling and the pizzazz of women's sports, we have to look at it like a business. Because ultimately, for people to continue to invest in it, we have to be building businesses like yours, businesses like ours, where we can drive revenue and we can actually show that this is an energy space. Because while everybody does watch women's sports, okay, I'll have that argument all day long. There are still a lot of people who don't believe that. And I don't want us ever to take our eye off the ball.
Sure. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we know that women's sports is projected to be a multi-billion-dollar industry even in the next couple of years, right? That is significant. I mean, you guys, you go look at the economics of other startup industries, that is tremendous growth. So you just think about where that can be, especially because LA 28 will be the first Olympics where more women are competing than men, ever, in the Olympic history. Like, think about what that is going to say to our younger generations of girls, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's super significant. And Portland can be a hotbed for that.
I love it.
You know?
I love a hotbed.
A hotbed, yeah. So okay, I have to ask you, Jenny, so what do you feel like as far as sports, right? So we think about women's sports that we have here in Portland. We have the Fire coming. Who has season tickets already? What? All right. Thorns. We have the Thorns here, right? We have also amateur leagues here, right? We have, I think we're gonna have softball coming.
We have the best roller derby team on the planet.
That's right, we have the roller derbies, right?
Yes.
What other sports do you think we could get here? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we can get them all. One really huge thing that's happening is softball.
Yes.
There's a couple pro softball leagues, they're getting cities. I'm into it.
Yeah. I played softball as a young girl. That was a sport I felt I could really perform well at, because every other sport they told me I was too short. I loved basketball. They told me I was too short. It made me very sad. But to have softball here, and you go look at Athletes Unlimited, you look at their social media, the engagement is off
through the roof.
The charts.
Yep.
I mean, I would argue it's on par with the WNBA in a lot of ways. And because we all know the WNBA is kind of the star as far as like brand and storytelling right now in the media. But there are other leagues, WNFC, which I don't know if you guys know this, we have a tackle football team here.
Yeah, we do.
The Ravens, they're amazing. And they're growing massively across the country. And I know you guys have done some stuff with them, right? Yeah. So it's, I think that's an interesting point you bring up softball, because I think that is a sport, if it came here, especially with an MLB bid on the docket right now, it could be huge.
Totally. One thing I want to mention too is that those are young leagues. Those are super young leagues, and the W's been around. We're about to go into year 30.
Wild.
So if we're talking about trajectory and speed, AUSL, I mean, this was their inaugural year.
Yep. That is insane. Again, you look at the economics of that. Like, that is crazy to be able to grow that fast.
I mean, one thing I always think about is where women's sports is now and what the investment was like, what the representation, visibility, access was like.
Yeah.
And they still managed to be top of their game, winning championships, being amazing athletes with very little.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to funnel all of that stuff in. That's why I think we're at the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. And I think when I go back to the business of women's sports, right, what I get really excited about is because I still feel that women's sports is deeply under represented from a media perspective. I think our algorithms definitely, obviously put our interests in front of us, right? But if you really zoom out and you go talk to 1 out of 10 people, I still think there's a lot of education and opportunity there, right? So, like, you think about men's sports, right? And you think about all of the merchandise, the products, the innovation, men's health as an example. Women couldn't even be part of clinical studies until 1993. So you think about not just like what's happening now in terms of the investment in the leagues, right? The athletes, like growing viewership and fans. Then you think about companies like yours, where you're going to build new innovation around these spaces that's going to drive massive revenue to come into these sports. That's what I get excited about. New products, like you think about the cosmetics industry.
Oh my gosh.
It's huge.
There's so many variables.
What brand do you feel like has done the best job? And like that's maybe a traditional women's brand, or you would never imagine them playing a role in women's sports. What's that one for you?
I mean, I think that you brought it up. I right on the top of my mind is Sephora. They partnered up with Unrivaled, and it just blew up. It was huge. It was massive. And that's something that's very, very different from men's sports, let's say. Yeah. And then we've got Tunnel Fits. All
my
of
personal
the things.
favorite.
And we often talk about storytelling. You can have great stats, you can have a great game, you can have winners, champions, all of that stuff, great. But what is it that really makes a loyal fan? It's the authentic connection to the human story. You see yourself in them. And that's through storytelling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And guess what? Women are prolific at storytelling. So I heard a stat recently at the Nike Epicenter event that was in partnership with Raj Sports. Elizabeth Lindsay, who is the president of Wasserman Brands, one of the most valuable sports marketing agencies in the world, worth billions. B with a billion. B of a billion. And she said something that stood with me so clear, which was 80+% of men make their money on their field of play. So on the court, on the field. Women, it's inverted for women. She said women have to be prolific on social media to eat. I mean, that was like a light bulb for me.
Yeah.
And that just shows you the opportunity for more equity in pay. Obviously, it's something we all believe in, but it just also shows you the difference of how men and women approach sports today.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
So Jenny, where do you feel like, obviously we're on this incredible hockey stick curve of growth right now, right? The landscape is changing and more sports are coming in. You're also seeing more leagues start, like Shaun White's even starting Snow Sports League, right? That's gonna have both women's and men's sports. So it's just this huge, the whole sports landscape is changing.
I knew you were going to drop some winter sports in here.
Oh God, I love winter sports. I'm a huge snowboarder, so I love it. And I'm gonna ski this year, but I love winter sports. What do you feel like this landscape could look like in the next 3 years?
Oh my gosh. Again, I think that tip of the iceberg, we're just starting to see investment, representation, visibility, all of that stuff skyrocket. Yeah. One thing that I think is really important, and you mentioned it earlier, is the decades that have gotten to where we are now. To me, one of the biggest differences isn't just who's on the fields. The folks who are in your seat, the folks who are behind the camera, writing stories, commentating on sports, owning teams, owning networks, right? And these are women. So you have women getting into positions of power, making decisions, and putting women at the forefront of decision making versus the other way around. And so that on the back end of incredible investment, all of those things, and incredible athletes in front of cameras, that whole, kind of universe is gonna I just can't see it going anywhere but
up?
Skyrocket.
Skyrocket.
Yeah.
And you brought up something that I think is really important that we talk a lot about on our show, which is life after sports. Because it is as we know, very few athletes, period, make it to the most elite levels, right? We know sport makes you great. 90% of women that are in C-suite positions were former athletes in some capacity. But you think about the whole sports space growing, creating more access for women to continue playing, but then also giving them more opportunities to work in sports.
1000%.
Because I do think that it has been intimidating for women.
Unwelcoming.
And unwelcoming to feel like they have a place to work in sports.
Totally.
And now people like you who have invented this new solution, right? It's going to signal to these younger girls that you belong here and you can innovate here and you can create here and you don't have to be an expert on every stat.
No way. I haven't dropped one single stat today. You're the stat lady.
I love a stat though.
You know who I think about a lot is the big three on ESPN. The big three, that visibility, and just put their full personality out there. I mean, they're building their own brand, they're building their story, and they're the best to do it. It's not just that they're beautiful and talented, but they know sports, right? And so they get up there and they are showing young girls, young boys, young children all across the world that this is what a sportscaster, a sports professional, a sports athlete, all the things looks like.
Absolutely. Before we move on to our last topic, Jenny, I just want to bring up, what would you ask anybody in Portland to do to keep women's sports top of mind?
Come to the sports bra. No.
That's an obvious one.
No, I feel like, to me, it's getting to know the players. It's getting to know the people. There's so much opportunity for them to build their brand, get their voice out there. I mean, these are individuals who have families, who have entire lives outside of sports, and that's how you connect to them. And that's how you become a lifelong fan of this person, of this player, and then of the sport. And the sport almost becomes like part of a universe, which is exactly like how humans are, right?
Right.
So I would say, pick a player, follow them on Instagram, follow their journey, watch them, go buy tickets. When they have a jersey, go buy their jersey, wear that everywhere, and then talk about it. One thing that I always think about is I was taking an Uber back to the airport in Vegas. And this guy pulls up and he's got like long hair, like a plaid shirt. He's got like the Eagles playing on like a cassette tape. And I have a WNBA basketball with me that I kind of like stole. And I couldn't fit into any of my bags, of course, so I'm just carrying it. He's like, oh, did you go to the game? And like this, that, and the other thing. I was like, yeah. And then he literally rattled off every statistic on every Aces player. And I was just like in the back seat, like texting my friends being like, this is the best day of my life. Like, it's happening. I was just like, it's happening. Like when people are just talking about women's sports, just like run of the mill. Hey, did you catch that game yesterday? Oh yeah, and then that to me is like my dream vision. My dream vision.
You're absolutely right. And even, I look at my own consumer behavior and they say when it comes to starting a company or innovating, you start with an N of 1, a sample size of 1, which is you. What is your idea? What is your insight that is driving this itch that you can't scratch, right? And I started talking about women's sports. I have never talked about sports in my life, unless I was playing it, right? Or I was training for my marathon, but that is a really different conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I said, you know what? Like, I am a tastemaker. I know I have an opinion and something to say. If I can get more women like me to feel like they want to talk about this while they're sitting having a cocktail, or they're at the sports bra, or they're shopping at Sephora, that is how we are going to unlock, just like what you were talking about, right? That conversation being overheard. That's how you know a brand is sticking.
Absolutely.
The brand of women's sports. Okay, so we're going to move into our last topic, and this one, Jenny and I are really passionate about this topic. And it really covers this idea of, I think a lot of women, or, growing up, it's been like, oh, I'm a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a softball player. I'm a runner. But the reality is women are incredibly multidimensional. And we can love a lot of different sports. And that's the power, because our word of mouth power is very strong. So let's talk about the crossover of fandom. You've covered it a little bit in the episode already, but I want to revisit it and kind of go a little deeper. I think you have a really interesting perspective on how we can grow these sports through the crossover of fandom.
Oh, absolutely. So like low-key, I only ever really was a fan of basketball until I opened the sports bra. Like, I was just like, oh, I better start watching soccer now. And so I started watching it because it was at the bra. And then, of course, we have as many sports as possible. And inadvertently, I became a fan of all of these different sports. But what really did it was exactly what I said, learning about these individual athletes, following them on their journey. And then the sports almost became just like a part of this incredible ecosystem. But one thing I will say is that I watched my very first pro volleyball game like 6 months ago, and it was a game changer. I'd seen a lot of volleyball on TV, and I was just like, this is awesome, great athletes. I watched pro volleyball, and I full on lost my voice. So in basketball, I feel like there are good plays and that you're screaming every once in a while for a great play. And in volleyball, it felt like every single play was just like, like that block was incredible. You know, that dig was out of this world. Even a serve was just like ace. Like, yeah, I got like 2 sets in and I was just like, okay, I am a hardcore fan.
You're gonna need a tea.
Yeah, yeah.
Some hot tea.
And what did it was a friend of mine who I know through basketball brought me to the game. And she was like, you got to see these players. I was like, oh, I've seen this on TV. And they're like, nah, it's different. And like, I watched them, you know, spike the ball. And I think that all of those women can dunk. Like, of course, I'm always just comparing it to basketball. I was like, that girl can dunk. Like, it was just out of this world. But to me, you can have these super fans, you know, hardcore fans for decades and decades and decades of one sport. But maybe it's because they only relate to it because that's what they played or that's what their exposure is because of TV, you know, right? Or what's on the news. And it's basketball and soccer and maybe some tennis. But where you get what I feel like is awesome and builds sustainability around the elevation and, you know, lifeline of women's sports is that crossover. Because what we found is that people who love sports, they don't love really one sport. They can just love all sports. And it's just about accessibility, visibility, and exposure.
Absolutely. And I think I follow women now from so many different sports that I would have never followed before. Not because I wouldn't want to follow them, but because I'm seeing other sides of their lives that are drawing me in. And then I want to go see them on the TV or on, you know, let's be real, on my phone. Or right. Not really watching TV as much, or going to a game.
Totally.
And I think that is, the crossover piece is so interesting to me because I feel strongly that for so long, women have been told you can only be one thing. You can only be good at this, like this is your thing. But the reality is, like golf as an example, it's one of the most popular sports for women over 40. And it's one of those sports you can play for your whole life. And sports like basketball, if you're injured like Jackie and you've had 10 knee surgeries, that limits your ability to play a lot of sports. So it's super important to fall in love with all of these different sports because whether you have dreams of going pro in it or you want to just like, you know, dip your toe in the water as a recreational player, like that's where the crossover has a ton of power in my opinion.
Totally. I love that you come from it from the player and athlete perspective, and I just come from it as like the sidelines and fandom perspective.
Well, I've had the unique honor of getting to know Jackie so well. Like this woman who has built an amazing career both in professional sports and now out of professional sports. I've got to understand what it's like to have a life-altering injury and hear it from her. And we know that women are at a 3 to 5 time higher disadvantage of getting an ACL injury than men. And there's a lot of studies coming out and trying to help solve for that, but we're a long way from being able to solve from the injury piece. And that's just one thing we won't even cover that today, that whole rabbit hole. But
on the next episode.
But, you know, I think you bring such a great point about that, like, also, if you're injured, there are other sports you can play, because guess what sport Jackie plays? She's obsessed with pickleball. She loves it. It's one of the fastest growing sports for women in the US. And I think globally, actually, don't quote me on that. But again, like that's another great example of like the crossover effect. And we just need to keep like encouraging that.
Absolutely.
For girls and women, right?
Totally.
And like getting our girls to go play pickleball when they're 13, right?
Love it. I
was fortunate enough to play so many sports that I fell in love with running because it was like I got to dip my toe in so many waters. And now that's the sport I do as, you know, a mid-30s woman, right? So I think the crossover effect is really interesting. Do you feel like there's one sport in particular that is just gonna take off?
that's not already.
That's not
like,
already. I'm just curious.
I mean, I feel like rugby. Rugby and flag.
Yes. Well, flag's going to be an Olympic sport in 2028. The other significant thing I've seen is you're seeing women like Caitlin Clark, right? Everybody knows her as a WNBA player. She's picking up a football, and she has one hell of a throw. Let me tell you.
And she can golf like crazy,
and
too.
she can golf. Like, that's the crossover effect, right? I love Jordan Chiles because I did gymnastics. I saw her playing flag football in like an amateur league. So yeah, the crossover of women's sports, that is going to be a huge growth opportunity. LA 28, rugby, the Women's Rugby World Cup is this summer. We want to see record-breaking numbers for that. Alona Mar, who has truly transformed the league from a star perspective, is just, I mean, she's just one athlete in so many that are going to grow out of that league. So I think that's a really great sport you mentioned. And it's honestly very intimidating to me. Like, I'm excited to watch it. It's so physical. I could never imagine like borderline almost tackling someone. But these women are like, it's like Beauty and the Beast. Like, it's unbelievable. And Alona talks about that, being this like Beauty and the Beast sort of persona. And I think that is such a message to girls that you can be competitive, you can be fierce, you can do hard things, but also if you want to be feminine, if that is a side of you you want to embrace, like that's okay too.
Absolutely.
It's a spectrum, right? So Jenny, sitting next to you here today in this moment at one of the most amazing stops in the LPGA Tour here in Portland has been truly an honor for me. And you're someone I look up to, what you've built here in a city I love so much. This is going to be the epicenter, and you and so many others are a part of this next chapter. So I want to thank you for sitting next to me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I mean, kudos to you too, and Flowers, because if it wasn't for you telling other people's stories and getting them on here to be able to feel free to tell their stories and share more and more about themselves, like that interview you did with Nancy yesterday or the day before, oh my gosh, I was just like eyes welling up. It was real. And I was just like, and I got to meet her and it was just a dream. And again, we are seeing stars right now getting their flowers, but we never want to forget the foundation that got us to where we are. Like whenever we have old athletes come into the sports bra, they're just like, thank you for building this place. And I was like, it's here because of you. And that's the continuous story that we want to tell. And you do an amazing job of getting the word out. And
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm very empowered, and I feel honored to be able to tell these women's stories and also share my own story, because I truly believe if I can get more women like me to fall in love with women's sports, this industry, the way we shop at Sephora, and we will shop that way at
That's
women's
right.
sports if we truly love it. And that is the business opportunity here, and the reason that Jackie and I founded this company together. So a couple of thank yous. We want to thank the Standard for making this possible here in Portland. We can't call Portland an epicenter of women's sports if we don't have things like this here that really celebrate the expansion, the opportunity for these athletes. So thank you to the Standard. Thank you to the LPGA for making Portland a stop as well. Thank you to the Sports Bra for being part. And I'm going to also just give ourselves flowers for planning this, our team. It's been a true honor, and the thing we would love to leave everybody with. So what are we going to ask everybody who listened in today? Number one, please go follow one of the athletes in the LPGA Tour, preferably the Portland Classic, but some athlete. Go talk to a friend who doesn't talk about women's sports, about something you learned from here, from Jenny and me. And lastly, make sure to get your season tickets to the Portland Fire, because
That's it.
we want this franchise to be the best yet in the WNBA. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. And oh wait, we have one more surprise that Jenny doesn't know about.
Yes.
So this is all the players for 2025. Sign this, and we're giving it to you to hang
at the bra. Oh, this is awesome.
So good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now
That's cool.
That's a piece of history, people. That's a piece of history.